Hi guys, welcome to a new My Modelhorse tech video. Today I'm going to show you what tools I use. I did a video about what materials I used and I want to go a little bit more in depth of that. I want to split it up again, do a new type of video of new materials that I use and other stuff. And today is the tools variant. So, what different tools do I use? Well, let's start with the first few, and that is scissors. I have multiple, and I mean multiple scissors. Scissors are something that I really need to use. For every piece I need different scissors. So, for example, if I need to cut out something really small of leather, I will use these little small hobby scissors. Yes, this works for me. For me, it works. If it is more thick leather or it's harder to do the scissors with the little scissors, then I will use the bigger ones. But the bigger ones are more used for bigger projects than this. This is really small and I can't use a really big scissor for it. I am going to use a smaller one for it. The bigger one is used for bigger projects like cutting wood, cutting, well, sometimes felt things, cutting paper, cutting molds, cutting patterns. For everything else, basically, then except for the little small projects like saddle flaps. This one, for example, this is a fabric scissor. So for every fabric, this one is not being used for any other thing than fabric. It is a fabric scissor and I'm just using it for that. So, do I have smaller ones and bigger ones of that one? Yes, I do. But I prefer to use the smaller one because most of my projects are not that big in fabric. In fabric size, they are quite small and I need smaller scissors. Just what I think is handy, easy to use, basically. So that's the scissors. And then I have a lot of more stuff that I'm using, and one of that stuff are knives. Yes, I use knives, and I have a few different set of knives. Most of them are here. Yes, I do have the different knives here. So I use a big knife. If I have a project that I need to skive a whole lot of leather for, and I don't want to do it with this small one, then I'm going for the big one. The big one, yeah, I use it not a whole lot, because most of the projects are quite small again. But sometimes I need to do a whole lot of leather skiving, and then I will use this big one, because the big one comes in handy for bigger projects. And this small one comes in handy for smaller projects. And this one I can also have the knife removed and then put a new knife on. And I'm going to show you what I use for types of knives. I believe I have 10 and 15 here. The green one is the 10 and the gold one is the 15. 15 is the type of knife that is on here right now, and type 10 is the one that I have here in my hand. So you can see there is some difference in type of form of the knife. And this knife is handy for, again, skiving a little bit of bigger projects, not even really big, but slightly bigger than this one. If you do have some really intricate pieces of leather and you want to skive a really thin layer off, or just a corner, then I would use a smaller one for the more intricate parts. It doesn't really matter what you skive and how you skive it, then I use this one, the bigger one. So that's the knives. There are a few different things that I use, but these are the ones that I use the most of the time and find really important to use. If I don't use them, then I have a big problem because I cannot finish the leather that I need. So again, we have the saddle flaps. The saddle flap is a little bit here with the, this is fake leather by the way. So fake, you know. I use fake leather, I use real leather, I use different types of leather. I like to use everything. I like to experience every type of leather that there is. I want to try everything. So this is a fake leather and it's a bit bigger. I skived one layer off and the other two layers are still there. And I don't want to remove the other two layers. If I need to remove the other two layers, which is also a case, then you will get this really thin type of flap. And you can see it's black on each side. And if it is another layer on there, then the other side will be a little bit more wide. That's what happens with fake leather. With real leather you cannot really see it because you are going to paint it over. That's another thing that I will talk about. Maybe in another video if you want to. But this is what I do with the leather. Skive a few layers off and you need to know what you want to cut off. I don't always want to cut off everything. If it is too thin, I cannot always do anything with it. It needs to be really thin when I need to have knee pads, for example. But if I need to have a flap, a big flap, then it needs to be a little bit bigger. If it is not that big, then there is no form you can attach to. It's just too floppy, too wobbly, and it will not look good. So that's why you have different thicknesses and stuff. That's why you need different knives for it as well. So then I'm going to pliers, and don't be don't be confused. I have a few pliers. This is all that I have. Well, not exactly. I have more. Wait. I have one or two more. I have different ones and different brands. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it. So let's get started. I have this really big one. Again, for the bigger projects that I need really big buckles, I'm going to use a thicker one, bigger one. With this bigger one I can make really nice cinches. These need to be a little bit thicker than the normal English riding saddle curves. The Western saddles do have a little bit more thicker buckles and they are quite intricate. So that's why I need to have a bigger plier. And with this bigger plier I make most of the time the Western types of buckles or other buckles that needs to be a little bit bigger. With the smaller ones I make the English ones. And I have a lot of them because I make mostly English. So that's why. I have this really flat nose pliers. These are really flat and quite big. And if I need a square buckle, I will make it with this. Most of it. Not all of it. Because I also use this one. It's also a type of flat nose, a little bit round, half round, moldy type of pliers. I don't know all the terminology for the pliers, but I know they are pliers. That's just the thing. I know you can cut with some of these pliers, but this one is a cutting plier. I will with this one cut the pliers off, and if I want to have a nice edge on the wire, I will use a scissor. And I will use the really small scissor, the hobby scissor. This one, quite a big nose. I make the buckles on there for the girth. And I will start with this one to get a sharp edge. And I will finish with this one to make them smaller at the end. with these two. These are round nose pliers, and what you can make with this is different types of jump rings. With this one, if I need really big jump rings, I can make them with this one. They are going quite far, quite big. If I need to make really small ones, I will also do that with this, but then it stays on the top more. So because they are smaller than right here at the beginning, you can see different sizes. So this is what I make with these ones. I make jump rings. I make really small bridle buckles with these ones. Yeah, basically this is the pliers what I use. Then what else? Yes, I use this one, and I use something else, and I need to grab that. Alright, I use these two together. And you are thinking like, what? Yeah, this is a hammer, a really small one, a little baby one, and these are needles. Sometimes I want to make my works even more realistic by adding some holes to it, so that the girth can actually attach to it, the saddle with holes in there, so that I can actually cinch it up like a real saddle. Also, I use this for more detailing on the saddle, on the bridle. It would just look more realistic, and I use a hammer for that to hammer in the needle into the leather or into what I need to do with the needle and hammer. So that's why. So if you just saw, I use a lot of different tools, but there are some tools that, well, I use as well, but not as often. The first row of tools were the tools that I use almost every time while making tack for the model horses. But now I'm going to talk about the tools that I don't really use that often. And the first of that tool is rulers. I need rulers. I use a metal one, but I also use this flexible one. Yeah, sometimes you just have to measure something and it needs to be flexible because of the shape of the horse, for example, the shape that you are going for. I don't know, sometimes I use this and sometimes I use that. But I also use a metal ruler. I really like this one because sometimes I will go over the ruler with my knives and then the ruler is a little bit messed up, but the metal one still survives every day. So, good one to have. I recommend a metal ruler. Alright. Some other tools is when I'm going to paint leather, I need obviously some paint brushes. I do use them. Not a whole lot. I don't use a whole lot of real leather, and if I do, then I need these. I need the brushes. Then another thing that I do use is a rotary cutter. This is a knife that I use to cut fabric with that I cannot do with scissors, or that I'm following a certain pattern. Then I will use this one, the rotary cutter. Really handy to have. I do recommend to have one. Do you necessarily need it at that moment of time? No, but it's certainly handy to have. I think those were all of the tools that I use. I'm looking at everything that I'm thinking of right now, but I think this is it of all the tools that I use. Another video will be what the materials I all use for tack making, so that will be kind of like fabrics, what kind of leather, that sort of stuff, and other things. And these were the tools that I use for tack making. I hope you liked it, I hope you find it really helpful, and right on the screen is another video to my channel.